Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupah Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroh Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tushe Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna and welcome back again to the Caitanya Caritamrita classes. So we're back in my little mini library here. And so we will be continuing today where we left off yesterday in the Rai Ramananda Samvad. As I was saying in the time building up to the Rai Ramananda Samvad, that this is a very extensive and long section. It is in many ways the heart of the Caitanya Caritamrita, and therefore we're going we're going somewhat slowly through it. We've spent already quite a lot of time discussing it, and there is still quite a lot more to be discussed. So we're going along, but we're nearly at the conclusion of the first question, and as we left off yesterday, we're just about to begin the first few moments of that real conclusive answer. The last few steps, which are so close to the conclusive answer for Mahaprabhu's first question of what is the absolute, final, complete, most perfect goal of life. So, just mentioning that to give an idea of the scope of what we're in. This is again a very long study, and the next few chapters following this will normally be somewhat faster to go through. That's not to say that they're not alternectarian, and if one is qualified enough, which I certainly am not, one could elaborate on any of these chapters for hours on end. But in order to give a general idea of the general direction, and to give some ideas of the purport and meaning of each chapter, there's much less time needed for the following chapters as there is for this one chapter of the Rai Ramananda Samvad. We'll again come to a rather dense section later on, but even then, I would personally say that this is the densest and most intense section of the Caitanya Caritamrita. So, we are continuing the Rai Ramananda Samvad. As I was saying yesterday, we began in the world of material action, of karma. We were discussing varnashram, dedicating one's activities to Krishna, and then all of these were rejected, external, eho bahyo, and therefore age koho ar, speak something more. And then we went through into the Viraja river. I kept on saying Viraj river yesterday, I don't know why, but the Viraja river, and in there we were finding ideas like Sarva dharman parityajya, abandon all religious activities, to abandon material existence. And also, we found ideas of Jnana Mishra Bhakti. But those two were also rejected by Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as what? Bahyo. And therefore, age koho ar. And then we entered in with an understanding that Jnana Shunya Bhakti. Jnana Shunya Bhakti is Now, hoi, this is all right, this is it. We've begun to hear of perfection. But age ko hoar, there is still more to be said. There is still more that we can dive into. We can go further into the realm of Golok. And so therefore, after that it was established that higher than Jnana Shunya Bhakti, or maybe not necessarily higher, but a more complete understanding of the ultimate goal, because Jnana Shunya Bhakti can still technically be executed by a beginner, or someone who is not yet proficient on the devotional path. So, higher than this was Prema Bhakti. Prema Bhakti is now what Rai Ramananda proposed as the ultimate goal of life. And then Mahaprabhu, what does he say? Ehohoi, yes, this is also it. This is also all right. But age ko hoar, there is more that can be spoken. There are more things that could be said about this. So, go further. But before he says go further, Rai Ramananda has clarified there are the two varieties. He just needed to clarify in terms. When he is speaking of Prema Bhakti, yes, he is endorsing the Prema coming from the Vidhi Marg of Vaidhi Bhakti, of Bhakti or devotional service according to the rules and regulations. Yes, he has endorsed this. Yes, this Prema is valid. Yes, this Prema is so worshipable and ecstatic. But this is not the higher form, and therefore it is not the one that is to be deliberated upon when we hear of the further deliberations. And so then he has explained about the Ragmarg of Raganuga, the prem that arises from the execution of Raganuga Bhakti, following in the footsteps of the Ragatmik devotees of Golok. So he said this second one, this is what I am speaking of. But even then, Mahaprabhu, he was saying, surely, there's a bit more. Eho hoi, kintu age ko hoar. Speak a little bit more. So then, we heard of Dasya Ras. Dasya Ras, ecstatic devotional service on the spontaneous platform, executed in the mood of a servant. And the discussion of that, which we heard about yesterday, was what we concluded with. And then I hinted that we will be beginning the next question, because Mahaprabhu, he is happy with this, and he is almost at the point of being very happy. So far he has only been satisfied, but he is nearly at the point of being very, very happy. But there is still kichu age ar. There is still a small amount, kichu, a tiny bit more to go. And after that tiny bit more, then we will start seeing Mahaprabhu becoming very excited. Then we will be in the domain of Golok. However, even within Golok, there are several levels, so we are still not quite there at the end goal that we are waiting to hear from the lotus lips of Sri Rai Ramananda. So then, yesterday, I will just recap a tiny bit because the earlier things I'm now condensing a little in the recap because we've heard so many times. But we were speaking then about the nature of Dasya Ras. Dasya Ras is higher than Shanta Ras. Because in Shanta Ras there is Trishna Tyag. There is no thirst for material nature. And there is also a constant satatam, a constant absorption in one's Ishtadev, in the Paramatma. There is a constant absorption like this. For some people there is a kind of absorption in Krishna, but it is very passive. And therefore, Ramananda Rai, he has gone straight to the conception of Dasya Ras. And so Dasya Ras has Trishna Tyag. It does have no thirst for material things, for material objects, for mine, referring to things for sense gratification for myself. There is not a mine coming from Ahankar, from the false ego, but instead there is a different mine in Dasya Ras, which is not present in Shanta Ras. There is a different sense of mind, and this sense of mind, which is what makes Dasya Ras higher, is the mamata, saying mine as in, or rather his. I am his, I look to the Supreme Lord, and I am his, and I am to serve him. And to serve him like this is what makes it even higher. And this is the defining aspect of Dasya Ras. We know one word that is used in the Pramana that is quoted is kinkara. Kinkara is sometimes used to refer to the servant or the slave. And this means kim karomi, king karomi, king karomi. What can I do? What can I do? What is there available for me to do? Because I belong to my Lord. The Supreme Lord is my Lord, is my Master, and I am His servant. So what can I do for Him? So this is that attitude, and it is a very high attitude. It is a very good attitude. But Mahaprabhu, he was not yet fully satisfied. Because Shuddha Dasya does not exist in Golok. There is mixed Dasya, there is Mishra Dasya, but there is not Shuddha Dasya. Pure servitude exists outside Golok and it is worshipable. Hanuman is the great example of pure Dasya. And how much worship we can give to Hanuman, how much worship we should give to Hanuman. It is not that we are allowed to acknowledge him as a great devotee, but that we should acknowledge him as a great devotee. Not, of course, in the style of demigod worshipping. Worshipping Hanuman just out of some mere sentiment, out of some mere desire to get some protection or to get some benefit, or just because why not? There needs to be an intelligence behind worship, not just to simply meagerly pick up whatever one finds and then simply worship. But Hanuman should be worshipped as a great devotee, and understanding Hanuman to be this great elevated devotee, he should be worshipped like this. And worship like this, what mood should there be? The mood should be, please Hanuman, please give me your mercy so that I may progress in the execution and development of my devotional service, of my bhajan. So, but Hanuman, as worshipable and as great as he is, still, as we said yesterday, because of his, the fullness of his dasyaras, there is still an element of fear almost. Not an element of fear in a negative sense, as in he's afraid of his Lord, but a sort of reverential fear. Here is my high Lord above me. And because of this does not exist in Golok so much. So because of this, Mahaprabhu, he has said, Ehohoi kichu age ar. Speak a little bit more, so close. And then what happens? Rai kohe shokho prem shorbo shadho shar. Shokho prem, sakhya prem. Spontaneous devotional service executed in what mood? In fraternity. This is the highest perfection. Fraternity, of course, is just meaning in the mood of friendship. And so, this is very exciting to Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu, he replies now for the first time. So we started off with Eho Bahyo, this is external. Then it was very exciting to hear Eho Hoi. Now this is all right. And now we're getting into the second highest thing that Mahaprabhu will identify. And he'll say Eho Uttom. This is the highest thing. Eho Uttom. This is the nothing higher is there. Or maybe there is something higher, but this is in the category of those highest things. Actually, it is in the second meaning that he is saying this, because then what does he say? Age koho ar. There's still some more to be spoken. This is it. This is the height. Now we're in the height of perfection. But surely you can speak something more. And he can speak something more. And something more will be spoken. But before we get to that more which will be spoken, let us first discuss a little the glories of this Sakhya Ras. So, within this, Rai Ramananda, he quotes two pieces of, he quotes one piece of Shastra, sorry, not two. He quotes one, and is a very, very nice, statement being made. And this statement is, Itham satam brahma sukhanna bhutya. Dasyam gatanam para daivatena maya shritanam naradarakena sardham vijahru krita punya punjaha. So what's he saying? Is he saying neither those engaged in the self-realization of appreciating the Brahman effulgence of the Lord, nor those engaged in devotional service while accepting the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Master, nor those under the clutches of Maya, thinking the Lord an ordinary person, can understand that certain exalted personalities after accumulating volumes of pious activities, are now playing with the Lord in friendship as cowherd boys. And this statement has been made by Shukdev Goswami in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, as most of these glorifications are made. And it's said by Srila Prabhupada very sweetly, very succinctly, that Shukdev Goswami was saying this. Why? Because he appreciated the good fortune of the cowherd boys who played with Krishna and ate with him on the banks of the Yamuna. So, he is speaking here, speaking of the glories of Sakya-ras. No one can understand this, not those engaged in the self-realization of appreciating the Brahman effulgence of the Lord, nor even those who are executing devotional service, aware of the Aishvarya, of the high position of Krishna can. And here, we are hearing, again, a repeating of why Dasya Prem is not held on the same level as Sakya Prem. Because Dasya, as we said, Dasya is filled with the mood of reverence. Dasya mixed with these other moods can exist, and it is not then filled with reverence, but it does not proceed from an understanding of the Aishvarya of the Lord. So, we are hearing here that this is the highest, this is Uttam, and there are elements of it which make it proceed higher than the other things, which, while being accepted, Eho Hoi, they were not promoted with the excitement of Mahaprabhu saying, Eho Uttam, this is the highest thing. Now you are speaking of the high things. This excitement was not there before. And there are a few elements that have been added in Sakya-ras that do not exist in Dasya, and definitely not in Shanta. So, firstly we have the Nishta of Shanta. Shanta Ras, maybe being static, but at least there is Nishta. There is that constant. Nishta means to be focused, single-minded. That constant focus on the Supreme Worshipable Lord is there in Shanta Ras. And that is also there in Dasya. But Dasya adds the Mamata, the idea of mine. Or rather, I am his. He is mine and I am his. He is my master and I am his servant. So this mamata, this exists in Dasya. But Dasya has some Brahma. Dasya has a lack of intimacy because of the understanding. There's not an idea of equality. There's not an idea of equality, there's not an idea therefore of intimacy. When there is not an equality of individuals, the intimacy cannot be there. And therefore it is defined by a mood of some Brahma Bhava. But the seva of Sakya Rasa, the seva, the service of it, is Vishrambha Bhava, is Vishrambha Seva. It is done in intimacy. And it is done in a special intimacy. An intimacy that can only happen when one is now forgetting that Krishna is Bhagavan. One is forgetting that and one is thinking themselves to be equal to Krishna. There is a reason why Mahaprabhu, now he is saying Eho Uttam. Now he is saying this is the highest thing. There is a reason for this. The reason he is saying this is because with Dasya, the devotee is conquered by Krishna. In Shanta, the devotee is conquered by Krishna. But starting from now, starting from Sakya, Krishna is conquered by the devotee. The devotee is now conquering Krishna, is now taking Krishna and ruling over him. Now we are seeing so fully that sentiment that we were speaking of earlier when we first heard Eho Hoi, of what? That Krishna, Ajita, the unconquerable, becomes Jita, becomes conquered. By who? By his devotee. So this glorification, this immense position we are starting to see begin at Sakya-ras. And so Sakya-ras is very elevated in this way. And we know, we were speaking before about the Brahma Vimohan Lila, how the Gopas, they would run around with Krishna, they would play with him, they would say, hey Krishna, they would take some of his food, maybe sometimes they would steal his food. They'd say, oh, this is really, really nice food, here, try some of mine. And that same Supreme Lord who normally needs to be approached through yajna and all these specific rules and regulations, everything needs to be purified, everything needs to be done precisely, even in puja, everything needs to be done by such strict rules. That same Supreme Lord, that same Supreme Lord, he is fed by his friend, who is taking his dirty hand and he is giving some food into the mouth of Krishna. This is the glories of Sakhya Ras, of Sakhya Prem. And so like this, the Supreme Lord is accepting. And they are not thinking, wow, Swayam Bhagavan himself. This is the great shortcut. They're thinking, oh, my friend Krishna. Oh, my friend Krishna, here, he try my food. Sometimes Krishna, he will sleep in the mornings. He will sleep in, he won't be awake. But all the other cowherd boys, they are waiting for him. They want to play with their beloved Krishna. Because it is not a disregarding equality. It's not that, oh, Krishna is the same as me, so sometimes I want to see him, sometimes not. It's that Krishna is a cowherd boy like me, but gosh, I just love him so much. My whole mind is captivated by him. My whole heart is taken by him. And so when Krishna is not there to play, they all become upset. And they're thinking, well, we need to play with Krishna. So they rush into Krishna's house and Jashodama. She's saying, no, Krishna is sleeping. With her Vatsalya Ras, her parental love, which we will hear about soon. With that parental love, she says, no, don't disturb him. Krishna, he is very tired. He's a very tired boy. So please do not wake him up. But then they say, okay. But in their naughtiness, they rush past them. And then they'll run into Krishna's room. And they'll start jumping around and shaking him and say, Krishna, it's time to play. And the Supreme Lord, who sleeps not for a second, who is able to create people who are Gurakesh, who are conquerors of sleep and ignorance. This person asleep is being woken up by his friends. And his friends are saying, Krishna, let's go play. And then Krishna becomes very excited and he goes and plays. We know when we were discussing the beginning of Brahma Vimohan Lila, when Krishna goes out in the morning and wishes to have a picnic, all he does is he plays his bugle or he plays his flute, and then countless and countless of cowherd boys will rush to play with him. Their hearts are completely encaptured by that transcendental Pied Piper of Sri Krishna Swayam Bhagavan. So Sakhya Ras is very, very elevated like this. And so because of this is why Mahaprabhu was so impressed, because from this platform onwards, Krishna is controlled by his devotee. So, and so we hear, again, in the shloka that I quoted, Itham satam brahma sukhana bhutya. So, the happiness of those who have realized Brahman and are therefore meditating in it satam constantly. This is referring to those Jnana Mishra Bhaktis, or rather maybe those in Shantaras. So, we are making the point I was saying again yesterday, we've sort of forgotten about them a while ago. We are interested in the dynamic interplay of Krishna with his devotee. And how can they play? How can the people in such a passive mood appreciate the Supreme Lord, seeing and admiring his effulgence? Maybe even those who are appreciating Krishna and Shantaras, but those Jnana Mishra Bhaktis who have absorbed themselves in Brahman realization. It's because we know there's different destinations that can be received, some higher than others. But those who have received the rather low destination of being merged into the Brahman effulgence, how can they take the nirvishesh, qualityless soup, homogeneous liquid of the Brahman effulgence, and how can they play with it? How can they, as the Sakhas, wrestle with Krishna? Can you wrestle with the vague white light? No, they cannot. So they do not even have the opportunity for play. They cannot wrestle with this. And so, because of this, we can think naturally, which one is higher? We can speak of philosophical proofs, and we should speak of philosophical proofs. But even just speaking to the heart, what is better? To float in an ocean of transcendental light? Or to play with the Supreme Lord, of who that transcendental light is just the glow of his skin? To wrestle and to grab the feet in wrestling of that Supreme Lord, who even the greatest yogis and mystics cannot even dream of even obtaining one tiny dust from those lotus feet, but instead to wrestle with those. Which of these is higher? Which of these is sweeter? To play and to laugh with the Supreme Lord, or to float in His glory? This is rather clear. So like this we can understand. We can understand something of the positions of those great devotees in Sakya Ras. And in Caitanya Caritamrita elsewhere, and when we get up to that point later on in the discussion of Caitanya Caritamrita, we will maybe not delve into them too much because we've established very well here in Rai Ramananda Samvad, but there are three gunas, three qualities, three elements, three facets of the Sakya Prem. Firstly, there is Sakya. That seems a little silly to say. Well, of course, Sakya is an element of Sakya Prem. But the idea is the distinguishing feature of the Prem, the love which is felt by those who are in this mood, one of them obviously would have to be Sakya Prem, would obviously have to be Sakya Ras, would obviously have to be relating to Krishna in the mood of a friend. So because of this, Sakya is one of the elements of the Sakya Prem. Then next is what I mentioned earlier, Vishrambha Pradhan, the intimacy with the Lord, to wrestle with the Lord, to play with the Lord, like this. And then there is Gaurava Sambhrama Hina. This is also very important, and this is again the distinguishing factor which allows it to be so high, so elevated. There is a lack of reverential respect and deference. There is a lack of thinking, wow, this is the Supreme Lord, the King of all the universe before me. There is almost a complete total lack of that. Well, not almost, there is a complete lack of it. It is forgotten. Not because Aishvarya doesn't exist in Goloka. Aishvarya exists very much in Goloka. But because this allows the heart to be opened up even more, that fear of the master has gone away, and now comes the intimacy and comfort of a friend. So, because of this, because these three features, they define Sakya Ras. And one might say, oh well, you know, you've said that there's Aishvarya in Goloka. Well, we're not hearing a lot of Aishvarya. We're hearing a lot of sweetness about a very human-like Krishna, even though he is not at all in the same category as a human. We're hearing all of these things. We're not hearing of the opulences of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How can you say there is Aishvarya in Vraj? And I can say this rather easily because of what we've already heard, even from Aghasur Lila, which we were discussing earlier. The killing of Aghasur is a great showing of Aishvarya. What a great potency. The carrying of Govardhan Hill is a great element of Aishvarya. But the thing is, Goloka is so filled with Madhurya, so filled with that intimate sweetness, so filled with this mood of Gaurava Sambhrama Hina, and so filled with Vishrambha Pradhana, so filled with all of these things, that this Aishvarya gets covered. It is like sugar. You pour enough sugar onto something, you won't even be able to taste it. You pour enough sugar onto medicine, and then you feed it. Sometimes we used to, I had a pet dog in my home in Port Macquarie. Well, still have, but when I was living there, had one. Yep. And whenever he would need medicine, he would refuse to eat the medicine because he's a dog. He doesn't have the intelligence to realize I need this medicine. So we would take it and we would wrap it up in peanut butter or in cheese or something. And then he would swallow happily, and he wouldn't even realize that the medicine was there. There was no less medicine than if we would have given him the medicine directly. But the strength and the sweetness of the other flavors overpowered that flavor. In the same way, that strength of Madhurya, that strength of intimacy in Goloka is so strong, that it covers away all of the opulence that is present there. The opulence is there, but it is not even tasteable because it is covered by the sweetness that is the Madhurya, the intimacy of the beauty of everything. So this is how we can understand this. It is not that one option is Vaikuntha, which is very much filled with Aishvarya, and the other one, but no Madhurya, none of that intimacy, still the Dasya subservient sort of mood. And then one is Goloka, which is very beautiful but doesn't have any Aishvarya, there's no opulence there. So these are our two options. This is not true at all. Of all the opulence that exists in Vaikuntha, there's so much more in Goloka. But it is just the strength of the Madhurya that overpowers it. So this is how we can understand that there is Aishvarya. There is still opulence available in the realm of Goloka Vrindavan, and it is, however, just not perceivable because exactly in those circumstances. In Govardhan Lila, all the cowherd men, they thought they were helping Krishna. You'll see in paintings and all. They're there with their sticks pointing up, trying to support Giriraj Govardhan. They're supporting it, they're holding it up, they're helping. In their minds they're helping at least. So, because of this, their rasa, their love, it is covering over any perception, even when Aishvarya is being shown. And this allows Krishna in turn to taste that sweetness of the Nara human-like pastimes. So, like this, we hear. And so this is very high. And Sakya-ras, in fact, has a very special role as well. There's just one other final glory before we hear Mahaprabhu's response, which we already have heard. Eho uttam ageko hoar. So, Sakya-ras is very interesting because Sakya-ras, unlike the other rasas, it can be mixed with any of the other rasas. Sakya-ras can be mixed with Dasya. You can have Sakya and put a bit of Dasya in. You can also have Sakya-ras and you can mix it in with a bit of Vatsalya for the older Gopas. So there'll be some servitude from the younger Gopas. They have a bit of respect because Krishna is like an older, he's like an older boy. And the older ones will have some parental, like a big brother looking out for Krishna. And even there can be a tiny bit of Madhurya Ras. The romantic love. Not of course in any way that they are directly having with Krishna, but in a similar way to the Manjaris. The Manjaris who are friends of Radharani. They are female friends of Radharani and they support Radharani. And supporting Radharani, they support her in her Madhurya Ras, in her romantic love for Krishna. In the same way, there are some cowherd boys, the Priya Narma Sakhas, and they, to some extent, taste the Madhurya Ras by supporting Krishna and by helping him in the execution of the Madhurya Ras. So, unique to the rasas of Goloka, Sakya Ras can be mixed with any of the other ones and still be a pure rasa of Golok. Now, one might say, of course, that well, maybe Sakya Ras is not composed entirely of that idea of intimacy. Because look at Arjuna. But we must understand that Arjuna's Sakya Ras is not the Sakya Prem of the Rag Marg that we are discussing. The Sakya Prem of the Rag Marg that we are discussing is unique, and its only abode is in Golok Vrindavan. So Arjuna, he is in Golok in a sense, in the form of Arjuniya Gopi, but Arjuna himself, who is experiencing Sakya Ras with Krishna, his one is a different one. It is filled with Aishvarya. It is filled with opulence. Because we know in Bhagavad Gita, when he asks to see the universal form, he becomes bewildered and he thinks, wow, unlike the denizens of Golok, who see Giriraj Govardhan being lifted, they see Giriraj being lifted, and then they think, oh no, this is not some opulent thing. Instead, Arjuna, he sees this and he thinks, wow, here is the Supreme Lord. How have I done all of these things? How have I been treated myself so intimately with you? How is this possible? So his Sakya Ras, this is not, even though it is Sakya Ras, even though it is worshipable, all glories, to Arjuna. I mean, I'm barely qualified to glorify Arjuna. So, not to diminish, but he is not acting on that level that we are discussing here, of the Vraja Prem, the Vraja Prem Sakhya Ras. So because of that, he is an example of a different mood, of a differing mood, a differing aspect, a differing conception. So then, we keep on going, yeah? And we understand that Arjuna's Sakhya Ras is separate and different to the Sakhya Ras of, say, Sridham and Subal and all of these friends of Krishna in Golok Vrindavan. Arjuna's Sakhya Ras is still having elements of Aishvarya, of appreciating the opulence of Krishna. So then, we should also understand then that even though it is said of the 9 forms of devotional service that Arjuna is the one who has mastered Sakhya, of the love of a friend, and this is true, and that it is not incorrect that he is the great example of it, we should differentiate between the 2 types of Sakhya Ras, that of Arjuna and, say, other friends from the Dwarka Lila, and that from Vraj Lila. And in Vraj Lila, that person who most embodies, who most certainly provides all of the embodiment of all that Sakhya Ras can be, is of course Sri Balaram. Balaram, of course, is also the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the first expansion of Krishna. There is no difference, in a sense, between Balaram and Krishna, except the color of the skin. That is the only distinguishing point between them. In a sense, we can hear this discussion later on in Caitanya Caritamrita, somewhere in this ballpark, and we also hear it in one of the earlier sections of Teachings to Lord Chaitanya. So he is the Supreme Lord himself. However, of course, being an expansion, he is the greatest act of service. So he also is so much having dasya to Krishna. All of the paraphernalia of Golok are all expansions. The chairs, all of the items of worship, they're all expansions of Balaram. So all of the paraphernalia, they are his expansions. Furthermore, he is also the older brother of Krishna. So there's some Vatsalya. He still looks out for him like his little brother. And then, of course, there is the Sakhya Ras, because he is still in his age. He's still having fun with him. They're still going out, playing together all the time. How sweetly. And then Madhurya Ras. Some people say Ananga Manjari is the form of Balaram. I am still doing some reading occasionally into this topic. There is no real mention of this, that Balaram is Ananga Manjari in the 6 Goswamis or in the writings of Srila Prabhupada. So there is some difficulty with this view that Balaram, he takes the form of Ananga Manjari, and that is how he also is in Madhurya Ras. For a few reasons. 1a, there is no real mention of this. The first real mention we have of Ananga Manjari being being the Shakti of Balaram is in the Ananga Manjari Samputika, which is a much later text. And while there's no reason to say that it is not a valid text or anything, it is not exactly a strong pramana. Furthermore, there is some difficulty in the idea that Ananga Manjari is the Shakti of Balaram, because normally when the Supreme Lord has a Shakti, that Shakti is having the romantic Madhurya Rasic, the Madhurya Ras relationship with the personality that she is a Shakti of. Radha is Srimati Radharani is the Shakti of Krishna, and therefore she is having, of course, the Madhurya Ras with Krishna. Sita with Ram, so on and so forth. So we understand like this, it can be a little difficult to say that. I'm not saying this isn't necessarily true, because it's not something that I've fully come to a conclusion yet with in my readings, but it doesn't really seem to make sense shastrically, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of good shastric evidence for Ananga Manjari being the Shakti of Balaram, and therefore being the way in which Balaram engages in the Madhurya Ras. However, it is also possible that I do not fully understand yet, and that she is, and that somehow a further explanation will come up. So I just made that point. It could go either way. Right now, I am leaning towards it seems like she is not the Shakti of Balaram. However, could be the case. And in that case, that is how Balaram tastes the Madhurya Rasa with Krishna. However, the other way, and this way is not scrupulous at all, there is no issue, is that Balaram, because he's the older brother, he's sort of looking out. Whenever it's sort of awkward, if Balaram, the older brother, was to accompany Krishna when he is having romantic fun. It would be kind of awkward. It would also be kind of weird. So, in order to make this awkwardness not arise, and therefore to allow the Madhurya Ras to fully flow, in order to make it fully flow, therefore he leaves and he is not present for those pastimes. And because of this, we can say he is indirectly participating there in the Madhurya Ras as well. And because of that, we can say here, Balaram, he is tasting all four rasas. However, predominantly, we like to think of Balaram as being in Sakhya Ras. And it is when he is also in Vatsalya Ras and is in Dasya Ras, this is why he is the original Guru. Guru Tattva finds its bank, its shelter, its source. It is the great Samashti Guru Tattva is the form of Balaram. And this is because in the mood of Vatsalya, he is having Guru relationship with Krishna as his elder. He is the Guru of Krishna, and therefore he can be the Guru of the whole existence. And because Balaram, he's the older brother, he's giving Krishna advice, he's telling him what to do. Of course, he's the son of Rohini, and it gets a little complicated, and we'll discuss a bit more how this all works in in the next section of the Rai Ramananda Samvad, describing Vatsalya, spoilers, the parental mood. However, playing this general role as the older brother of Krishna, he is guiding him, giving him advice. Krishna, do this, don't do this. He's helping him out. And because of this, he is the Guru also for Krishna. He is Krishna's Guru as well. So how much more qualified is he to be the Guru of the whole existence? So because of this Vatsalya, because of this element of Vatsalya to his mood, we can see this is a reason why Balaram, he is the great source of Guru Tattva. And in the other direction, he is tasting some dasya because he has expanded for the service to constantly serve that brother who he loves. Serving that great friend of him who he loves, and serving him so much, so well, the Supreme Personality of Servitor Godship, of Servitor Godhead. This Balaram, he is exemplifying everything that a Shuddha Vaishnav should be. Everything that a Vaishnav should be is found in Balaram's constant service in that mood of dasya. And because of that, that is what we wish to have. We wish to know how to express servitude to Krishna, how to serve him, now in the broader sense, not in dasya ras, but just in the general sense of jiber shorup hoy krishner nittodash. In this general mood, we should try to understand, and because of that, because Balaram so much embodies this, we can then see that Balaram here is also qualified to be that great source of Guru Tattva. So like this, Balaram, he is tasting all the moods, but he is very much embodying the Sakhya mood of a friend. And a Sakhya that is distinct and separate in many ways to the Sakhya of Arjuna. Because Balaram's is not so much tainted by Aishvarya. It is also filled with Madhurya. So there's a lot to speak of Balaram and of Sakhya Ras, but because, again, I want to keep moving, we will conclude the discussion now of Sakhya Ras, and we will hear, after Mahaprabhu said, Eho Uttam Ageko Hoar, after he said, this is the highest, this statement is very good, but please proceed even further. After he said this, what did Ramananda Rai say? He said, Vatsalya Prem, Shorbo Shadhoshar, Vatsalya Prem, loving service to the Lord in the parental relationship. This is the highest perfectional stage. And one may wonder, why did Mahaprabhu have an issue, and therefore he asked for something higher, knowing of course that Vatsalya would be next. And Srila Prabhupada in his purport, he says somewhat vaguely, he says that there is still something lacking. There can still be an intensification of the mood. There can still be something more intensifying to make this desires, to make this prem stronger. And so that is why he wanted a tiny bit more elaboration. Yes, this is perfect, but there is something stronger out there. And because of that, Mahaprabhu, he through the mouth of Ramananda Rai, has inspired this concept now. That Vatsalya Ras, that is also there, and that is higher. So, because of this, he speaks. And we can try to understand this. Because when we ask the average person who has children, I don't have children, so I can't really speak on this point, but I am, obviously, my parents have children, especially my mother has children. And I know many mothers who have children as well. And from seeing their behavior, we can ask, who do they think of more on a daily basis? Do they think of their parents more or of their children more? Their parents they serve. But their children, they also serve in a different mood. So, or even not of their parents, but their friends. Who do they think of more often? Their friends or their children? We know very clearly who they think of more. It is always the children. And so with this intensity, they're always thinking. No mother is thinking in the morning she's waking up. Or no good mother who is really in that mood of Vatsalya. She wakes up in the morning and thinks first, oh, I hope my best friend has eaten her meal today. They think, oh, now I need to, my children, they need me, they need my sustenance. They need me to take care of them. And therefore, I will go and take care of them. So, like this, the mother thinks. And because of this, we can see there is an intensity of Vatsalya over Sakhya. And what creates that extra element of intensity? Well, I hinted towards it in the example. And the example, and the thing is, so we have the Nishta of Shantaras, the fixed single-mindedness. We have the Mamata, the identification of mind that comes from Dasya. We have the Vishrambha, the intimacy of Sakhya. But we also have an extra element, an element of dependence. Because in the Vatsalya Prem, not only the friends do not think Krishna needs me to survive. Their service doesn't come from a life or death attitude that Krishna will not be able to live without me. But the Vatsalya Prem does. So that service is coming from the idea that I must serve Krishna. I must feed him. He is reliant on me for his maintenance. And because of this, the intensity is stronger. Because of this, the Age Koho Ar that was to be spoken is Vatsalya. It's Vatsalya Prem. And we see this very nicely. This is also, again, just like Sakhya Ras, it is a rasa, it is a prem which allows Krishna to be controlled. So then, what is the pramana? What is the shastric evidence that is quoted in order to justify this view? Which evidence does Rai Ramananda propose? And so he quotes very sweetly, now this time two texts, from the Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. So he quotes first, Canto 10, Chapter 8, Text 46, wherein Shukadev Goswami, he voices his appreciation of Nanda Maharaj and Jashoda Ma's intense love for Krishna. And what is that shlok? Nanda kim makarod brahman shreya evam mahodayam Yashoda va mahabhaga papau yasyaha sthanam harihi. O Brahman, what pious activities did Nanda Maharaj perform by which he received the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna as his son? And what pious activities did Mother Jashoda perform that made the absolute Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna call her mother and suck her breasts? And then he quotes a following text, which is giving an even higher glorification, or rather an even further glorification, intensifying this. And this is also from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is from the next chapter, which is when Mother Jashoda was able to bind up Krishna, Damodar, our great Damodar Krishna, who was bound by the love of his devotees. And appreciating the beauty of this pastime, Shukadev Goswami, what does he say? He says, Ne mam virincho na bhavo, na shrirapyanga shamshraya, prasadam lebhire gopi, yattat prapa vimuktidat. The favor Mother Jashoda obtained from Sri Krishna, the bestower of liberation, was never obtained even by Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva, nor even by the goddess of fortune, who always remains on the chest of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. This is a very, very, very high position that we are speaking of when discussing the parental love that Mother Jashoda and Vasudev not Vasudev, Nanda Maharaj have for Krishna. This is a very great glorification, and it is a very elevated thing. And there are quite a few things to discuss before we hear Mahaprabhu's reaction to this being presented as the ultimate goal of life. And in order to delve into these, we should think of the question that is being asked in text 77, describing the parents of Sri Krishna. Because Shukadev, he's asking a question. Kim means what? Kim akarot. What have they performed? What great shreya, what great auspicious activities have they performed in order to be qualified for such a great thing? And we must understand that it is by no shreya, by no auspicious or pious activities that one can be qualified. Forget about being the position of Jashoda or Nanda Maharaj. No. By no pious activities can this be obtained. We already discussed this yesterday, so I won't go into much more deliberation, but the only price by which one can pay in order to enter into those things is lolyam, is greed. When one has greed for such things, then they will obtain it. Then they will have it. Then they will take it. And so with lolyam, with greed, they will hanker for it, and then they will have it. But again, as we were discussing yesterday, a very elevated thing, not something to be rushed into. Genuine greed is not so common, it is very rare. So, this is being said in general, actually more in terms for glorification. He's saying how great the auspicious activities must have been. How many great acts of austerity cannot even compete with this. Cannot even compete with the great destination that Mother Jashoda and Nanda Maharaj are at. So it is he's saying this in order to give us an idea of the glorification. What great activity could they have done? What great performances must they have done in auspicious activities, in yajna, in tapasya, in order to get this position? Actually, they did none of these. Actually, specifically in their case, they never needed to attain the position because eternally, they are nitya siddha. There's never been a time where they have not been at this position. So it is being done as a glorification. In the same way as we might see something great before us. And if we say, what possibly could this person have done in order to have such a great thing? It's not necessarily that we're saying this in order to be curious, like, hey, how did he achieve this? We're saying, what glory is this thing which that person has? How amazing is this thing? So in this way, Shukadev Goswami, he is asking. But there is a pastime which speaks of how Mother Jashoda and Nanda Maharaj how they came to be the parents of Krishna. Because we know Prishni and Sutapa, they performed lots of great austerities in order to become Devaki and Vasudev. Just in case somebody's thinking I'm getting confused. And they worshipped Narayan very extensively. And worshipping him, performing great austerities, they said, all we want is we want for you to be our son. We want for you to be our child. And if you are our child, then we will be happy. And of course, the Lord, he said, okay, very nice. And so they became Devaki and Vasudev. And they were able to, in the prison, be for some moments the parents of Krishna. And then obviously after in Dwarka Lila to an extent as well. Nanda Maharaj and Jashoda, however, were two different people. They were Drona and Dhara. And Drona and Dhara, they both asked Brahma. They were asking and praying to Brahma. They were saying, Brahma, please give us the position. Please give us the position of having love for Godhead, love for Krishna in the form of this child. Please, we want prem. We want prem. Please give it to us. And so, Brahma, he said, tatastu. Let it be so. And so he gave. And then they later went on and they took birth as Nanda Maharaj and Jashodama. Now there are a few interesting points to be pulled out in these two pastimes, and a comparison of the two, and then an understanding of their respective rasas. So in a similar way as Arjuna's Sakya ras is tainted in a sense by Aishvarya, or rather maybe tainted is too aggressive a word, is mixed in with Aishvarya and opulence. In the same way, Devaki and Vasudev, their Vatsalya ras is not that fullness. It is not that full which ignores the deity of Krishna in order to let the heart flourish as much as possible. But Nanda Maharaj and Jashoda Ma's is. So, the differences on why Nanda Maharaj and Jashoda Ma, or rather Drona and Dhara, got such a high position and Devaki and Vasudev did not, is twofold. One is that Devaki and Vasudev, in their form as Prishni and Sutapa, they asked to have the Supreme Lord as their child. Their prayojan, their goal in life was Krishna. And this is a good understanding, but it is not the highest understanding. Because Drona and Dhara, they said, we want prem. Love for Krishna is the highest goal for life. Love for Krishna is what we are aspiring for. Love for Krishna is what we want. Drona and Dhara asked for these things. They asked for this alone, actually. And because they asked for that alone, they got the higher thing. Because they didn't want Krishna. They didn't want Radharani. They wanted prem. We must understand always sambandha abhidheya prayojana. What is the state of things now and how do we relate to it all? What is the way to get to our goal and what in actuality is our goal? And the prayojana, the highest prayojana of our line, the highest goal is prema prayojana. As Ramananda Rai has said, prem bhakti, this is it. So prema, Krishna prem is the goal, and because they asked for this, they got something much higher. They got the fullness of the Vraja prem, the Vatsalya in Vraja prem. So Krishna is not what we want. We do not pray to Krishna to get Krishna. We pray to Krishna to learn how to love Krishna, to get Krishna prem. And then in that mood, we will have Krishna in a much stronger way than if we had approached him the other. This is the importance of understanding the prayojana and the goal. Because if we approach in that way, there is a greater amount of obtaining Krishna. So much stronger is Krishna obtained in this pure Vatsalya ras, which is only asking for more prem, more prem, more prem, or even to have prem to begin with. So much more intimately and so much more strongly is Krishna captured in this way than if we approach with the desire to capture Krishna. So this is one lesson to be learned. the other lesson to be learned, and then one clarification on one point that may be confusing, and then we will conclude for today and continue our discussions tomorrow. The other point that is to be made is that, actually, no, I was going to say, no, I'll say it today. So, but I'll elaborate more upon it tomorrow. Drona and Dhara got this highest thing. Why? Because they didn't approach Narayan directly. Sutapa and Prishni, they directly worshipped Narayan. And so they got something. But Drona and Dhara, they approached Brahma, the devotee of the Lord. And therefore they got a higher mercy. Through the Vaishnav is how we get true mercy. Through the Vaishnav is how we get the higher things. There is more mercy coming from the hand of the Vaishnav than even from the hand of the Supreme Lord. And therefore, because they approached Brahma, a devotee, therefore they got the higher thing. So this is a small point. I will elaborate more upon it tomorrow, because I'll conclude now, otherwise we'll go over time. But just one slight clarification. Some people may be confused. You just said they're Nitya Siddha. You just said Mother Jashoda and Nanda Maharaj. They're Nitya Siddha. They've always been in that position. There was never a time when they weren't. And now you're saying they somehow obtained it? This is a common question and is addressed a few times in Shastra. Jiva Goswami, in particular, has addressed it by making the point that Drona and Dhara were actually angshas. They were small, tiny expansions of Jashoda and Nanda Maharaj that had expanded out for pastime. In order to manifest this pastime, it was a small expansion of themselves, and then when they advented on the earth, they merged back into themselves and acted out their pastimes. So like this we can understand. This is the true tattva. So not to be confused, they are still Nitya Siddha, they just did this for pastime. Small angshas, small expansions of themselves, and these small angshas then merged in, and then the pastimes happened. So like this we can understand, so there's no need to be confused. Anyways, tomorrow we will continue on the point about approaching the devotees for prem, for bhakti, and then we will hear a little bit more about the nature of Vatsalya prem, and then finally we will continue now to the final answer, because after this Mahaprabhu, he says, Eho uttam age koho ar. There's still that tiniest hint left. There's still one thing left. And after we conclude Vatsalya Prem, we will hear about that highest thing. That highest thing which Mahaprabhu finally says, yes, this is it. This is the ultimate goal of life. But before then, we will continue our discussion of Vatsalya Prem tomorrow. Shri Shri Rai Ramananda Samvad ki jai. Shri Rai Ramananda ki jai. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Shri Krishna Das Kaviraj Thakur ki jai. Shri Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.